So, or if you want to, it's up to you. Tell me when you left for Lake Tahoe, what your expectations for the day were.
When we left, we had planned to go out for breakfast at, I think the place was called PJ's. And so we stopped with a group, and we were still debating whether or not we wanted to hike. And I was all for hiking, but it was really hot outside. And Dana's group mentioned that they were going to go stand up paddle boarding, and that sounded really interesting. So it was up in the air what we would do that day. But as we got closer to Lake Tahoe, we all kind of came to an agreement that we should probably just spend it at the beach instead of worry about hiking and staying hydrated and all of that stuff.
So, tell me what it was like. Had you been paddleboarding before, or what it was like that new experience?
It was most of our first times. Keikoma was the only one who had gone out. Dana and you, Carl, also went out with me. And it was a little nerve-wracking because I was afraid I was going to fall and hit the rocks or something like that. I don't know why I was afraid of falling, but I think it made me a little bit more wobbly, just the knowledge that I could fall. So it took me a little while. We sat on our knees and paddled, and then we would try to stand up. And once we wobbled, we'd go back on our knees, and it went on like that for a little while. I think Dana caught on the quickest, and she took off on her own, and Keikama kind of took off on his own. But I was afraid I'd never find my way back, so I stuck around Carl.
Who didn't know the way back?
That turned out to be not such a good plan.
Okay. So, Keikama and Dana had gone off, and you were headed back, and tell me what happened next.
Yeah, so Carl and I were out for a while, and we got pretty good. We'd jump off every once in a while to get into the cold water because it was so hot outside and the water was 50 or 60 degrees. It was nice to just jump in and jump out. And every once in a while would fall if we got distracted or anything. But we stabilized for a while. And we were on our way back because Keikoma passed us and kind of was telling us it's about time to head back. And he wanted to find Dana. And so we started paddling back. And we weren't too deep. We were kind of weaving in between the shore and the buoys. Kind of sticking to the shore some, looking for Dana, keeping an eye out. And we both heard this guy saying, "Help, help." And I looked around, and one of us said, "Did he say help?" And immediately I kind of thought, like, why would you ask that question? You just go and investigate. So I zoned in on him, and I started paddling as hard and as fast as I could, and I completely forgot about needing to balance or anything, which could have been really bad if I had fallen off. It would take me a while to get back up and going, but I just focused on him and paddled out there as fast as I could. As soon as I got there, I asked, "Are you okay?" And he responded something along the lines of, "Out of energy," but I can't really remember. So I reached out. He was holding onto a flipped inner tube, one of those with fabric over it, so he didn't really have a handle on it. And so I grabbed his other hand and pulled him to my board, and I had this vision that the minute I got to him, he would just jump on my board, would be fine, I'd paddle him in. But he couldn't do that, of course, he was tired. So I pulled his arms as far across the board as I could and tried to put his hand into the little carry slot. But it couldn't get that far. And so I jumped into the water with the life jacket that was attached to the board, and I tried to put it on him, but he wasn't moving his arms for me. I was trying to shove his elbow through to get his whole arm in. And so it's just kind of dangling on him. I don't think the life vest was made for a guy of that size. He was a bigger guy. And so I stuck both of my hands underneath his arms and tried to hold him onto the paddleboard while he was still kind of holding on to that. And Carl was kind of holding down the other side of the board, I think, to keep it from tipping over to give us a little bit of stability. And I start paddling to the shore, and I realize me swimming to the shore is no big deal. Me swimming to the shore with a paddle board and a big guy, a little bit harder. And I don't know why, but I just kind of started thinking, gosh, what if I run out of energy? What if I can't make it to the shore? So I started screaming for a nearby guy. I screamed as loud as I could, help, help, but I was out of breath. But that guy came over and started helping swim to shore. Before too long, we hit a spot where I could almost touch the ground. I could feel my toes sinking into the sand, and I kept trying to stand on that, but it wasn't quite far enough. But I kept thinking, okay, I can touch, I can touch, I can touch. And so as we got further in, I could actually touch. And so we started kind of dragging him with the paddleboard and further and further. And I kept thinking, why isn't he just standing up and walking to the beach? So we just kept paddling him on. I kept asking if he could walk, and I don't think he responded, but I can't really remember. And we got really close to the beach to the point where he could sit and still be, just his waist would be in the water. And I told him, go to the beach now, and he wasn't getting up. I think he must have been in shock or something, I'm not sure. Then a woman, I assume was his mother, came running out to him, and she started crying, and that triggered something in him, I think, and he started crying. So they were all crying, and it was a really beautiful moment. He still couldn't get up, and I was trying to tell them, go get him water, this, that, and the other, and somehow they did. I don't even remember seeing anyone bring out water. Carl and I were kind of standing back a little, letting that moment happen, but I kept thinking that I wanted to know more about him. We've been doing this intensive journalism thing for a while, so the reporter in me was like, get his name, but I also wanted to follow up with him. So he wasn't responsive, so I asked the woman for his name, and she may have made it up, I'm not quite sure, but it was Steve Miller, like the musician, and that is a very common name. I tried to find him on Facebook to see if everything turned out okay, and there were way too many Steve Millers. But after asking his name, I was in this kind of limbo where I felt that it was safe to leave him, but at the same time, I didn't want to leave him. I wanted to make sure everything was okay, even though he was pretty much out of the water. So we stuck around for a little while and then started heading back. And I had this huge adrenaline rush, and I don't think I realized it until we started heading back, but my whole body, I felt like I had 50 shots of espresso. So we kept going, and pretty quickly, I still felt like that, but my physical body felt exhausted. I was so tired. And so Carl and I tried to find where we entered the lake, and we passed it up by by like 50 miles. I don't know. We went way past, and then we had to backtrack, and we got to tell everyone our story. So
You mentioned that you checked on Facebook for him. Have you talked to anyone else or written, or what have you thought about, or after the days after?
I've just kind of wanted to follow up to make sure everything turned out okay. I can't imagine what would go wrong, but because he was in so much shock, I wanted to know. So I tried Googling him and Facebooking him, but that was the extent of it. I never found anything. And then I told my story to a couple people, and it spread like wildfire. Everyone knew my story. So that was kind of cool. It was cool to think, cool in a creepy way, to think that if I wasn't out there, he may have drowned, and the beach was crowded, which is astonishing because surely other people heard him scream help, but maybe not. I don't know.
how were you able to like get to sleep, or did you was there?
When I got home that day, I was tired. I actually said I was going to sleep in the car, but we got on a huge rant and I couldn't sleep. But when I got back, I told myself, okay, I'm going to go take a nap. Then I'll get up later and do stuff. But I couldn't take a nap. And I actually went to bed really late that night. And I'm not sure why, because I was so exhausted.
And is it normal now, or is it?
Yeah, I'm normal now. It's just kind of a out of body experience. It doesn't seem like it actually happened anymore.
Is there anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.